Dr. Elena Vasquez sat alone in the dark communication room of Mining Station Prometheus 7, her eyes burning from staring at screens for 12 straight hours. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed as she monitored the deep space frequencies for any sign of intelligent life beyond their small corner of the galaxy. Most nights brought nothing but cosmic static and the occasional automated beacon from passing cargo ships. Tonight was different. A strange signal pierced through the usual background noise, weak but unmistakably artificial. Elena leaned forward, her heart racing as she fine-tuned the reception array. The transmission was unlike anything in their databases, complex mathematical patterns wrapped around what seemed to be desperate vocal sounds. She called up the translation protocols and waited as the computer worked to decode the alien language. When the first words appeared on her screen, Elena felt her blood turn cold. It was a distress call, but not just any distress call. This was from the Cathari, the peaceful traders who had helped human colonies survive diseases and disasters. For decades, the message was fragmented, broken by static and interference. But Elena could make out enough to understand the horror. Cathar Prime was under attack. Their cities were burning. Their people were dying. The Dominion fleet, a brutal alliance of warlike alien species, had come to their peaceful world with weapons of destruction. Elena's hands shook as she enhanced the audio, trying to pull more information from the dying signal. She could hear explosions in the background, screams of pain and terror from beings who had never known war. The Cathari were herbivores, gentle creatures who had spent centuries perfecting art and science. Instead of weapons and warfare, the transmission continued with coordinates and a personal plea from Ambassador Thel, the same Cathari diplomat who had saved Elena's home colony from a deadly plague 20 years ago. She had been just a child then, but she remembered the kind alien who had worked day and night to develop a cure that saved thousands of human lives. Now Thel was begging for help, his normally calm voice breaking with desperation. He spoke of planet crackers, massive weapons that could split worlds apart. He spoke of civilians being hunted down like animals. He spoke of children who would never see another sunrise. Elena tried to respond, to let them know someone had heard their call, but the signal was one way only. She could only listen as an entire civilization cried out for salvation from the darkness that had descended upon them. Captain Marcus Reed arrived at the communication station just as the transmission reached its peak of horror. He was a practical man, hardened by years of managing mining operations in the outer colonies. But even he went pale as Elena translated the desperate pleas coming through their speakers. "This has to be fake," Reed said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Cathari haven't had enemies in centuries. They're neutral in all conflicts. Nobody would attack them." Elena shook her head, pointing to the technical readouts on her screens. "The signal characteristics are authentic, Captain. This is coming from Cathar Prime, and the voice patterns match Ambassador Thel's records perfectly. This is real." The transmission grew weaker, more distorted. Through the static, they could hear the sounds of a world dying. Buildings collapsing, weapons firing, voices calling out names of loved ones who would never answer again. Then came the final message, clear despite the chaos around it. Ambassador Thel spoke directly to any humans who might be listening, thanking them for the friendship their species had shared. He asked them to remember the Cathari not as the broken people crying out in their final moments, but as they had been builders, healers, dreamers who had tried to make the galaxy a better place. The transmission ended with an explosion so massive it overloaded their receivers. Elena stared at the silent screens, tears streaming down her face. An entire species, millions of peaceful beings who had never hurt anyone, had been wiped out while she could only watch helplessly. Reed put a hand on her shoulder, his own voice thick with emotion. "We need to report this to Earth Command immediately. If the Dominion is expanding their territory, other worlds could be next." Elena nodded, but she was already working on something else. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced the signal path, using every trick she had learned in 20 years of deep space communication work. What she found made her stomach turn to ice. "Captain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The transmission was tracked. The Dominion followed it back along its path. Reed leaned over her shoulder, studying the data streaming across her screens. The readings were unmistakable, massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace, heading directly toward human territory. A fleet bigger than anything in their military databases, armed with weapons that could crack planets like eggs. "How long do we have?" Reed asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. Elena ran the calculations twice. Hoping she had made an error, she had not. Based on their speed and current trajectory, they'll reach the outer human colonies in 6 days. Earth itself in 2 weeks. The weight of realization settled over them both like a heavy blanket. The Cathari distress call had not just been a cry for help, it had been a death sentence for humanity as well. The Dominion had followed the signal back to its source, and now they knew exactly where to find the humans who had dared to listen to their victims. Final words. Reed activated the emergency communication array, preparing to send a priority message to Earth Command, but Elena grabbed his arm, stopping him. "Wait," she said, staring at something new on her screens. "There's more." A second signal was coming through, this one much stronger and clearer. It was not from the Cathari, their homeworld. It was now nothing but radioactive debris floating in space. This signal came from the Dominion fleet itself, a broadcast intended for any humans who might be listening. The voice was cold, mechanical, translated through universal communication protocols into perfect English. It belonged to Supreme Commander Vactile of the Hegemony, the military leader of the Dominion's war machine. "Humans of Earth," the message began, each word dripping with contempt. "You have been discovered. Your location is known. Your pathetic civilization will share the fate of the Cathari who dared to call out to you for help." Elena and Reed listened in horrified silence as Vactile described in clinical detail what the Dominion had done to Cathar Prime. Every city reduced to ash. Every space station destroyed. Every Cathari ship hunted down and eliminated. An entire species erased from existence in less than 24 hours. "You will have 30 of your days to surrender unconditionally," the broadcast continued. "Submit to Dominion rule, and some of your kind may be permitted to survive as slaves. Resist, and you will join your Cathari friends in extinction. Choose wisely." The signal ended, leaving Elena and Reed alone with the weight of impossible knowledge. Humanity was about to face an enemy that had just casually destroyed an entire civilization. An enemy with weapons and technology far beyond anything humans possessed. An enemy that saw other species as nothing more than obstacles to be removed. Elena looked at Captain Reed, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his grim expression. They both knew that Earth Command would never surrender, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. Humans had never been good at giving up, even when logic said they should. "Send the message to Earth," Elena said quietly. "Tell them everything." "We heard. Tell them what's coming." Reed nodded and began encoding the emergency transmission. As he worked, Elena turned back to her screens, scanning the empty frequencies for any other voices crying out in the darkness. She knew that somewhere out there, other species were probably receiving similar ultimatums from the Dominion fleet, but she also knew something that Supreme Commander Vactile did not understand about humans. They were not like the peaceful Cathari. They came from a world that had tried to kill them every single day for millions of years. They had survived ice ages and plagues, predators and natural disasters that would have destroyed gentler species. The Dominion thought they were hunting prey, but they were about to discover they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had declared war on the one species in the galaxy that had turned survival into an art form and warfare into a science. The distress call that had doomed the Cathari was about to unleash something the galaxy had never seen before, the full wrath of Earth's children. Admiral James Corton stood in the command center of Luna Base, staring at the holographic display that showed the approaching Dominion fleet. 3 days had passed since Elena Vasquez sent her terrifying report from Prometheus 7, and every hour brought worse news from deep space. Monitoring stations across human territory, the fleet was massive beyond anything in human military records. Thousands of warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest battlecruisers, moving in perfect formation toward the outer colonies. Behind them came support vessels carrying the dreaded planet crackers, weapons designed not just to defeat enemies but to erase entire worlds from existence. Dr. Maya Singh, Earth's chief xenobiologist, finished her briefing to the Emergency War Council. Her normally calm voice carried an edge of excitement that seemed out of place in the grim situation. Gentlemen, we've been thinking about this all wrong. The Dominion sees us as just another target, another species to be conquered or eliminated. They have no idea what they're really facing. General Patricia Hayes, commander of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward in her chair. Explain that, Doctor. Our intelligence reports show they've conquered hundreds of worlds. They know how to fight wars. Singh activated her presentation, filling the room with images of various alien species the Dominion had defeated. Look at these beings, General. The Cathari, the Valaxians, the Centauri Republic. What do they all have in common? Admiral Corton studied the images. All the aliens shown were clearly evolved from herbivorous or omnivorous species. Their homeworlds were garden paradises with gentle climates and abundant resources. Their cities were works of art, designed for beauty rather than defense. They're all from what we call garden worlds, Singh continued. Planets where evolution was kind, where survival meant cooperation and intelligence rather than violence and aggression. These species developed technology to explore and create, not to destroy. She brought up a new image, Earth as seen from space. Its surface scarred by ice ages, volcanic activity, and violent weather patterns. Now look at our world. For 4 billion years, Earth has been trying to kill everything that lives on it. Ice ages that lasted millions of years. Supervolcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that wiped out entire ecosystems. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Dr. Singh smiled grimly and continued. Every species that survived on Earth had to fight for every single day of existence. We didn't evolve just intelligence, we evolved the ability to adapt to survive, to fight against impossible odds and win. She brought up images of human history, showing wars and conflicts that had shaped their species. While other species were learning to live in harmony with their environments, humans were learning how to kill efficiently. We've been perfecting warfare for thousands of years, not because we're evil, but because anything that couldn't fight on Earth died out. Admiral Corton began to understand. You're saying we're different from every other species the Dominion has faced. I'm saying we're from a death world, Admiral. A planet so hostile that its children evolved into something the galaxy has never seen. Before, a species that views conflict not as a last resort, but as a natural part of existence. The briefing was interrupted by urgent communication from the outer colonies. On the industrial world of New Birmingham, factory worker turned soldier, Jake Morrison was reporting from the massive mobilization centers where millions of humans were preparing for war. Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers as he described scenes that would have seemed impossible to other species. Entire cities converting their production lines from consumer goods to weapons in a matter of days. Civilian populations volunteering for military service faster than the recruitment centers could process them. Children as young as 16 lying about their ages to join the fight. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Admiral, Morrison reported. People aren't just answering the call to war. They're demanding to be part of it. Factory workers are working double shifts to build weapons. Scientists are volunteering their labs for military research. Even the elderly are organizing civilian defense units. Dr. Singh nodded as if she had expected this reaction. This is what happens when you threaten a Deathworld species with extinction. Every human alive right now is descended from ancestors who survived things that would have killed gentler beings. The instinct to fight back isn't just cultural for us, it's genetic. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Ambassador Lisa Chun was discovering just how alone humanity stood in the galaxy. Her attempts to form alliances with other species had met with polite refusals or outright terror. The few alien governments willing to meet with her all said the same thing. The Dominion was too powerful to resist. The Altarian Council has agreed to remain neutral, Chung reported via encrypted transmission. They're terrified of drawing Dominion attention to their worlds. The Proxima Alliance actually asked if we would consider surrendering to avoid bringing war to their sector. General Hayes slammed her fist on the table. Cowards, every one of them. No, Dr. Singh corrected gently. They're just not like us. Their species evolved different survival strategies. When faced with overwhelming threats, they submit or flee. It served them well for millions of years. Until now, Admiral Corton said grimly. Until they met a species that doesn't know how to submit. The conversation was interrupted by priority alerts from monitoring stations throughout human space. The Dominion fleet had split into multiple battle groups, each one targeting a different human colony. They weren't planning a single decisive battle. They were planning systematic extermination. Admiral Corton studied the tactical displays, his mind racing through possibilities. The human fleet was outnumbered 10-1. Their weapons were inferior, their ships were smaller and less advanced. By every logical measure, the coming war was hopeless, but logic had never stopped humans before. Dr. Singh, he said slowly, what you're telling us is that we have advantages the Dominion doesn't expect. Exactly. They've defeated hundreds of species by using superior technology and overwhelming force. Against beings who fought like civilized creatures, they follow rules of engagement. They try to minimize civilian casualties. They surrender when facing impossible odds. She brought up recordings from the Cathari's final transmission, showing their beautiful cities and peaceful people. The Cathari fought bravely, but they fought like artists and philosophers trying to defend their museums. They couldn't conceive of the kind of warfare necessary to defeat an enemy like the Dominion. General Hayes was beginning to smile, and it was not a pleasant expression. But we don't just fight to win, Dr. Singh agreed. We fight to survive. And when a Deathworld species fights for survival, there are no rules, no limits, no concept of acceptable losses. We do whatever it takes. Admiral Corton activated the fleet-wide communication system, preparing to address every human military unit across occupied space. His message would be simple. The Dominion had made a fatal error in judgment. They thought they were conquering another peaceful species. But they had actually declared war on the one race in the galaxy that had been bred by evolution itself to be perfect warriors. All units, this is Admiral Corton, he began, his voice carrying to millions of human soldiers across dozens of worlds. The enemy has given us 30 days to surrender. They expect us to behave like every other species they've defeated, to calculate the odds, realize resistance is futile, and submit to their rule. He paused, looking around at the faces of his staff officers. Each one showed the same expression, grim determination mixed with something that might have been anticipation. They don't understand that humans don't surrender. We don't calculate odds when our families are threatened. We don't accept defeat when our children's future is at stake. They think they're fighting another garden world species, but they're about to learn what happens when you threaten a world that has been forging warriors in the fires of natural selection for millions of years. The response from human forces across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Every ship, every soldier, every colony was ready to fight. More than ready, they were eager to show these alien conquerors what Deathworld humans could do when pushed to their limits. But even as preparations for war continued, long-range sensors were detecting something that made even the bravest human commanders pause. The Dominion wasn't just bringing conventional weapons to this fight. Hidden among their battle fleets were devices that could literally crack planets apart, reducing entire worlds to asteroid fields in minutes. Supreme Commander Vaktal was not planning to conquer humanity. He was planning to erase them so completely that no trace would remain to inspire future resistance among other species. The message was clear. This would not be a war fought for territory or resources. This would be a war of extinction, and only one species would survive to see its end. The war began not with the massive fleet battles that military strategists had predicted, but with a dawn raid on Haven's Rest, a peaceful farming colony on the edge of human space. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Torres watched through her binoculars. As Dominion dropships descended from the morning sky like dark angels of death, their alien hulls gleaming in the pale sunlight, Haven's Rest had been chosen deliberately. With only 50,000 colonists and a small planetary defense garrison, it seemed like the perfect target for the Dominion's opening move. Supreme Commander Vaktal wanted to send a message to humanity: surrender or watch your innocent civilians die one world at a time. Torres had served in the Mars Rebellion 15 years earlier, fighting against corporate armies that tried to enslave human colonies. She knew how to make inferior forces fight above their weight class, but she had never faced anything like this. The Dominion troops pouring out of the landing craft were hegemony shock warriors, six-limbed reptilian beings bred specifically for conquest and slaughter. All units, this is Torres, she spoke into her communicator as the first enemy forces hit the ground. Remember what we talked about in training. These aliens think they're fighting another soft target like the Cathari. They're about to learn that humans don't die quietly. The initial assault targeted the colony's administrative center, where the Dominion expected to find frightened civilians ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty buildings filled with explosive surprises. Former Marine Rick Dalton had spent the past week rigging every important structure with homemade bombs built from mining equipment and agricultural chemicals. The first wave of hegemony. Warriors kicked down the doors of the colony hall and walked straight into an inferno. The explosion shook the ground for miles around, and when the smoke cleared, nothing remained but a crater where 50 of the Dominion's elite troops had been standing moments before. Dr. Sarah Kim watched the battle unfold from her improvised medical station in the old schoolhouse. As the colony's only physician, she had volunteered to treat wounded defenders while coordinating civilian evacuations. The plan was simple: make the aliens pay in blood for every meter of ground they took, but the Dominion forces adapted quickly to human tactics. Crystalline Vorth warriors joined the hegemony troops, their energy weapons cutting through human defensive positions with surgical precision. These aliens had conquered hundreds of worlds, and they knew how to adjust their strategies when facing unexpected resistance. The battle for Haven's Rest became a grinding, house-by-house nightmare that neither side had anticipated. The Dominion had expected quick victory against a species they assumed would fight like civilized beings. Instead, they found themselves facing humans, who used every dirty trick their violent evolution had taught them, colonist farmers who had never seen combat became guerrilla fighters overnight. They used hunting rifles to pick off alien scouts from hidden positions. They contaminated water supplies with industrial chemicals that proved toxic to Dominion physiology. They set traps using farm equipment that could crush a six-limbed hegemony warrior like an insect. Torres coordinated the defense from a command bunker built into the colony's grain storage complex. Her original plan had been to conduct an orderly retreat, buying time for civilian evacuation. But something unexpected was happening. The colonists were not just fighting back. They were winning individual engagements against supposedly superior forces. Rick, what's your status at the North Perimeter? She called to Dalton, who was leading a group of volunteers and defending the main road into town. We just took out another dropship with a fertilizer bomb, Dalton reported, his voice crackling with exhaustion and adrenaline. These aliens are tough, but they don't think like humans. They keep walking into obvious traps because they can't imagine anyone being desperate enough to use them. Dr. Kim's voice interrupted on the communication channel. I'm seeing wounded Dominion troops they're leaving behind, Colonel. They're not attempting medical evacuation of their casualties. I think they view wounded soldiers as disposable. Torres absorbed this information with growing understanding. The Dominion fought like a machine, efficient and logical. They minimized losses by abandoning anything that slowed them down, including their own wounded. But humans fought like a family defending their home, and family members never abandoned each other. This philosophical difference was creating tactical advantages that human military doctrine had never considered. Every human soldier fought harder, knowing their comrades would never leave them behind. Every Dominion warrior fought with the knowledge that injury meant abandonment by their own forces. The turning point came when a squad of hegemony shock troops cornered a group of human children in the colony's primary school. The aliens expected easy hostages to use against the defenders. Instead, they found themselves facing 15-year-old Maria Santos, who had been practicing with her father's hunting rifle since she was 8 years old. Maria's first shot took down the squad leader with a perfect headshot from 50 meters away. Her second shot disabled the warrior attempting to call for backup. By the time additional Dominion forces arrived, they found 6 dead hegemony troops and a teenage girl who had vanished into the complex network of maintenance tunnels beneath. The school, word of Maria's stand spread through the human defenders like wildfire. If a child could kill Dominion elite troops, then these aliens were not the unstoppable force they pretended to be. They were just another enemy that could bleed and die like any other. The battle entered its second day with neither side holding a clear advantage. The Dominion controlled the open ground and main roads, but every building became a fortress that had to be taken room by room. The humans controlled the underground tunnel network and could appear anywhere without warning. Dr. Kim moved her medical station 3 times as the fighting shifted through different sections of the colony. Each time, volunteers helped her evacuate wounded defenders through secret passages that connected basements and storm drains. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior knowledge of their own territory. Torres received an encrypted message from Admiral Corton just as Dominion forces were preparing what appeared to be a final assault on the colony center. The message was brief but electrifying. Human reinforcements were coming, but Haven's Rest needed to hold out for 6 more hours. "All defenders, this is Torres," she announced over their emergency channel. "Help is coming, but we need to keep these bastards busy a little longer. Remember what we're fighting for: our families, our friends, our right to exist in this galaxy without bowing to alien tyrants." The final phase of the battle began when Dominion orbital platforms started bombarding human positions from space. The aliens had grown tired of ground combat against an enemy that refused to follow their rules of warfare. They decided to simply burn Haven's Rest from orbit and claim victory through overwhelming firepower, but they had underestimated human stubbornness one final time. Instead of seeking shelter from the orbital bombardment, Torres led her remaining defenders in a desperate assault on the Dominion's main landing zone. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. The charge across open ground under alien fire was suicide by any rational calculation. Torres led 300 humans against more than 1,000 Dominion troops supported by hover tanks and air support. They should have been massacred in the first minute. Instead, something beautiful and terrible happened. The human defenders fought with a ferocity that shocked even their enemies. They advanced through weapon fire that should have stopped them, absorbed casualties that should have broken their morale, and kept attacking even when tactical retreat would have been the sensible option. Rick Dalton died trying to destroy a Dominion command post with a satchel charge. Dr. Kim died treating wounded soldiers in the middle of a battlefield. Maria Santos died defending the colony's children from alien warriors twice her size, but their deaths were not meaningless. Every human who fell took multiple Dominion troops with them. Every act of sacrifice bought precious time for their comrades to achieve objectives that should have been impossible. When the reinforcements finally arrived, a full human battle fleet that had made the fastest hyperspace jump in military history, they found Haven's Rest still flying human colors. The colony was in ruins. More than half its defenders were dead or wounded, but Lieutenant Colonel Torres was still alive and still fighting. The Dominion troops that survived the ground battle retreated to their ships with a new understanding of what they faced. These humans did not fight like any species they had encountered before. They fought like creatures that had evolved in hell itself, and dying in battle was preferable to living in defeat. Supreme Commander Vaktal received reports from Haven's Rest with growing alarm. His forces had eventually taken the colony, but at a cost that made victory feel like defeat. More importantly, they had failed to break human morale. Instead of terrorizing humanity into submission, the battle had only made them more determined to resist. The message was clear: this war would not be won quickly or easily. The humans were not the Cathari, and they would not go quietly into extinction. If the Dominion wanted to erase humanity from the galaxy, they would have to pay a price in blood. That might destroy them both. The galaxy was about to learn. What happened when you declared war on a species that had turned survival into an art form? Admiral James Corton stood on the bridge of the battleship Vengeance, watching as the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared to strike back at the Dominion forces that had been terrorizing colonies across human space. The defensive havens. Rest had bought humanity something precious, time to mobilize their true military potential. But more importantly, it had taught them exactly what kind of enemy they were facing. The Dominion fought like a machine, logical and efficient. Humans fought like a force of nature, chaotic and unstoppable. Captain Ana Rodriguez commanded the stealth destroyer Retribution as it led a squadron of similar ships toward Dominion supply lines deep in occupied territory. Her mission was simple in concept but revolutionary in execution. Humans were about to show the galaxy what total war really meant. "Remember, people," Rodriguez addressed her crew as they prepared to drop out of hyperspace near a major Dominion logistics hub. "We're not just fighting to defend our worlds anymore. We're fighting to make sure no other species ever has to send a distress call that goes unanswered." The Retribution and her sister ships materialized from hyperspace like ghosts, their advanced stealth systems hiding them from Dominion sensors until it was too late. Rodriguez had studied the alien supply networks for weeks, learning that they operated on predictable schedules with minimal security. They had never faced an enemy that would attack civilian infrastructure. They were about to learn that humans made no distinction between military and civilian targets when their children's lives were at stake. The first strike hit a massive food processing station that supplied dozens of Dominion colonies. Rodriguez personally fired the torpedoes that reduced it to expanding debris, cutting off supplies to millions of alien civilians who had supported their government's expansion into human space. "Target destroyed," her weapons officer reported, with satisfaction. "That'll take out their food production for this entire sector," Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Next target, the medical supply depot on Nexus 7. If they want to fight a war of extinction, they'll learn what that really means. Back on Earth, the transformation of human society into a war machine was proceeding at a pace that amazed even military planners. On New Sparta, Colonel David Park oversaw production facilities that had been converted from civilian manufacturing to military use in a matter of days. The humans were not just building more weapons, they were building different weapons. Dr. Benjamin Foster led teams of scientists who had studied captured Dominion equipment and biology, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. "The Hegemony warriors have excellent armor against energy weapons," Foster explained to Park as they toured the new production lines. "But their breathing apparatus is vulnerable to certain chemical compounds that are harmless to humans." Park watched as factory workers assembled thousands of gas grenades designed to target alien respiratory systems. "Will this violate the laws of warfare?" Foster laughed bitterly. "Colonel, they wiped out an entire species in 24 hours. They're planning to crack our planets like eggs? I don't think they're worried about laws of warfare." The new weapons coming off human production lines were designed with one purpose: to kill aliens as efficiently as possible. Bullets that fragmented inside Dominion armor, explosives that created toxic clouds lethal to their physiology, computer viruses that could shut down their ship systems. But the real revolution was not in technology, it was in tactics. Humans were fighting this war unlike any conflict in galactic history. While other species had always treated warfare as an extension of diplomacy, humans treated it as a moral crusade that would not end until their enemies were completely defeated. Commander Rachel Stone proved this point when she led a boarding action against the Dominion dreadnought Overlord. one of the largest warships in their fleet. Her Marines had trained for months to fight in alien ship designs, learning to use their smaller size and greater agility against enemies bred for different environments. "Remember," Stone told her assault team as they prepared to breach the alien ship's hull. "These corridors were designed for six-limbed creatures twice our height. Use that against them. Get inside their reach, move faster than they can track, and hit them where they can't hit back." The boarding action was a nightmare of close combat in zero gravity. Humans and aliens fighting with everything from plasma rifles to improvised clubs in corridors filled with floating debris. Stone led from the front, using her knowledge of human military history to employ tactics that had never been seen in space warfare. The Dominion crew fought bravely, but they were trained for ship-to-ship combat, not the kind of desperate hand-to-hand fighting that humans had been perfecting for thousands of years. When the Overlord's bridge finally fell, Stone found herself face-to-face with its captain, a massive hegemony warrior named Korvax. "You fight without honor," Korvax gasped through his translator as human medics treated his wounds. "Your species wages war like animals." Stone looked at the alien commander with cold eyes. "We fight to win. Your people declared war on a species that has been fighting for survival since we crawled out of caves. Did you really think we would follow your rules?" But the most shocking development for the Dominion leadership was not human tactics or weapons. It was the strategic objective. That became clear as the war progressed. Intercepted human communications revealed something that chilled Supreme Commander Vaktal to his core. Humanity was not fighting a defensive war. They were not trying to negotiate for peace or establish new borders. They were planning to hunt down every Dominion fleet, liberate every conquered world, and destroy the alien empire completely. Dr. Maya Singh's assessment had been correct. Humans were not like other species. When threatened with extinction, they responded not with submission or negotiation, but with a determination to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Admiral Corton made this clear in a broadcast that was intercepted by Dominion intelligence and spread throughout their command structure. His words were simple and terrifying in their finality. "To the leaders of the Dominion Empire," Corton said, staring directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much death and destruction, "you made a mistake when you destroyed the Cathari. You made a bigger mistake when you declared war on humanity. But your greatest mistake was thinking we would fight this war like civilized beings." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We are not civilized beings. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to survive by becoming the most dangerous predators our planet had ever seen. And now you have made us your predators. This war will not end with negotiation or surrender. It will end when every Dominion ship is scrap metal, every conquered world is free, and every leader who supported genocide is dead. We are coming for you, and we will not stop until justice is done." The broadcast ended, but its impact rippled through Dominion territory like a shockwave. For the first time in their history of conquest, they faced an enemy that was not trying to defend territory or protect civilians. They faced an enemy that viewed their complete destruction as a moral imperative. Reports from the front lines painted an increasingly grim picture for Dominion forces. Human ships appeared without warning in sectors thought to be secure, destroying supply lines and communication networks before vanishing back into hyperspace. Human soldiers fought with a ferocity that broke alien morale and made surrender seem preferable to continued resistance, but most disturbing of all were the reports of liberated worlds. Humans were not occupying conquered territory or establishing their own colonies. They were freeing enslaved populations and helping them rebuild their civilizations, turning former Dominion subjects into allies in the expanding war. Supreme Commander Vaktal realized with growing horror that he had not declared war on a single species. He had awakened a crusade that would spread throughout the galaxy. Every world the humans liberated became a base for further operations. Every freed population became potential recruits for their cause, the war that was supposed to end with humanity's quick extermination had become an existential threat to the Dominion itself. These Deathworld humans had not just refused to die. Quietly, they had turned their own destruction into the catalyst for galactic revolution. In his private chambers aboard the flagship Dominator, Vaktal stared at tactical displays showing human forces advancing on multiple fronts simultaneously. The impossible was happening. An inferior force was defeating his superior fleets. Through sheer determination and tactical innovation, he activated his personal communicator and sent an encrypted message to the Dominion High Council. His recommendation was simple and desperate. They needed to end this war quickly before the human example inspired other species to rebel. But even as he sent the message, Vaktal knew it was probably too late. The humans had already demonstrated that the Dominion could be defeated. They had already shown that their empire was not invincible. They had already lit a fire that would burn across the galaxy until every world was free. *****. 6 months after the first Dominion attack on Haven's Rest, the roles in the galactic war had completely reversed. Admiral James Corton stood on the bridge of his flagship as the largest human fleet ever assembled approached the Dominion capital system, followed by liberation forces from dozens of freed worlds that had joined humanity's crusade for justice. The journey to this moment had been written in blood and sacrifice across hundreds of star systems. But it had also been written in hope, the hope of enslaved populations, who had never dared to dream of freedom until the humans showed them that even the mighty Dominion could bleed and die. General Michael Hayes commanded the ground assault. Forces preparing to invade Hegemonia Prime, the military heart of the Dominion Empire. His troops included not just human soldiers but volunteers from every species the Dominion had oppressed. Cathari survivors who had escaped their homeworld's destruction. Valaxian refugees whose colonies had been strip-mined into wasteland. Centauri rebels who had hidden in asteroid fields for decades. "Today we finish what they started," Hayes announced to his mixed force of liberation troops. "Today we prove that no empire built on fear and genocide can stand against people fighting for their freedom and their families." The final battle began not with traditional warfare, but with something the galaxy had never seen before. A coordinated uprising on every Dominion world simultaneously. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, working with intelligence networks built during months of liberation campaigns, had helped organize resistance cells throughout the Empire. As human fleets engaged Dominion forces in space, enslaved populations on dozens of worlds rose up against their oppressors. Factory workers sabotaged weapon production. Forced laborers in the mines destroyed critical infrastructure. Even household servants in Dominion administrative centers provided intelligence that helped human forces target key installations. Supreme Commander Vaktal watched his empire collapse from within while human ships hammered his defenses from without. He had spent his career conquering peaceful species that surrendered when faced with superior force. He had never imagined facing an enemy that would inspire galactic revolution simply by refusing to give up. "Sir," his aide reported with barely controlled panic, "we're receiving surrender offers from the Outer Rim governors. The Fourth Fleet has defected to the humans. 3 core worlds have declared independence and are requesting human protection." Vaktal stared at the tactical displays showing red symbols spreading across territories his people had controlled for centuries. The humans had not just defeated his military forces, they had destroyed the very concept that had held his empire together, the idea that resistance was futile. "Activate the planet crackers," he ordered, his voice cold with desperation. "If we cannot rule the galaxy, then we will deny it to everyone else." But Vaktal had underestimated human determination one final time. Captain Torres, the former lieutenant colonel who had defended Haven's Rest and been promoted to admiral after her heroic stand, had anticipated this final gambit. She led a suicide mission of volunteer ships directly toward the planet-killer weapons, knowing that stopping them was worth any price. "This is for Ambassador Thel," Torres spoke into her communicator as her small fleet accelerated toward certain death. "This is for the Cathari children who died calling for help. This is for every peaceful species that ever sent a distress signal into the darkness." Her ships were outnumbered 100-1, facing weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Logic said her mission was impossible. But Torres and her volunteers were not fighting with logic. They were fighting with the absolute determination of people who would rather die than let evil triumph. The battle around the planet Cracker installations was the most desperate of the entire war. Human ships rammed alien vessels when their weapons failed. Volunteer pilots flew their fighters directly into Dominion gun positions. Marines boarded enemy stations knowing they would never leave alive. Torres herself died in the explosion that destroyed the primary planet Cracker control center, but her sacrifice saved dozens of worlds and billions of lives. Her final message, transmitted across the galaxy, became the rallying cry that ended the war. "Tell them we came when they called for help," she said as her ship broke apart around her. "Tell them the Deathworlders of Earth keep their promises." The destruction of the planet Crackers broke the last of Dominion resistance. Without their ultimate weapons, Vectal-S forces had no answer to human tactics and alien uprisings. One by one, the core worlds surrendered or declared independence. The final confrontation came when General Hayes led assault troops into Vectal-S Fortress Citadel on Hegemonia Prime. The Dominion commander had barricaded himself in his command center, surrounded by his most loyal warriors, still believing he could negotiate some kind of settlement. He was wrong. Hayes and his soldiers fought through the fortress room by room, accepting casualties that any other species would have considered unacceptable. They were not trying to capture territory or seize resources. They were delivering justice for crimes that could never be forgiven. When Hayes finally confronted Vectal in his command center, the alien commander made one last attempt to appeal to human logic. "Your victory is complete," he said through his translator. "Accept our surrender and rule the galaxy as we did. Take the tribute that we collected. Enjoy the power that we built." Hayes looked at the being who had ordered the genocide of entire species and felt only contempt. "We didn't fight this war to replace your empire with our own. We fought to make sure no species would ever again have to choose between slavery and extinction." The war ended not with negotiation or conditional surrender, but with complete victory for the forces of liberation. The Dominion Empire was dismantled. Piece by piece, its territories returned to their native populations or established as independent worlds under human protection. But the real victory was not military, it was moral. Humanity had proven that evil could be defeated, that genocide could be answered with justice, that even the most powerful tyranny could fall when good people refused to accept it. Elizabeth Warren, working with Cathari survivors led by the scientist Nira, began the massive project of restoring Kether Prime from the radioactive wasteland the Dominion had left behind. It would take decades, but the gentle traders who had once helped human colonies would have their world back. The galaxy began to heal. Trade routes reopened between worlds that had been cut off for decades. Scientific cooperation replaced military competition. Art and culture flourished as species that had lived in fear finally felt safe to express themselves. But perhaps the most important change was the network of communication arrays that Elena Vasquez established throughout known space. The xenolinguist, who had first received the Cathari distress call, dedicated her life to ensuring that no cry for help would ever again go unanswered. The memorial station on Restored Kether Prime became the center of a galactic early warning system. Any species facing extinction or oppression could send out a call for help, knowing that somewhere among the stars the children of Earth were listening and ready to respond. The final entry in Elena's personal log, recorded on the anniversary of the Cathari distress call, summarized what humanity had learned from their first galactic war. "Today we remember Ambassador Thel and all the Cathari who died calling for help in the darkness. We remember the price of ignoring evil and the cost of fighting it. We remember that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be ready for war. The galaxy is safer now, but it is not safe. There will always be those who believe might makes right, who think the strong have the right to prey upon the weak. When they rise again, they will find the same thing the Dominion found, that the children of Earth do not forget their friends or forgive their enemies. We are the Deathworlders, forged in the fires of a planet that tried to kill us every day. We are the answer to every species that calls for help in their darkest hour. We are the promise that evil will never triumph while good people have the strength to fight. The story ended where it began, with a transmission sent across the vastness of space. But this time it was not a desperate cry for help, but a message of hope broadcast from Earth to every world in the galaxy. This is humanity calling. We are here, we are listening, and we will always answer when you call for help.